Year 300. Station Nexus 7. Catherian Empire border. The execution chamber filled with violet light. 6 Zalani workers knelt in the center, their gray skins slick with fear sweat. Magnetic restraints held their thin arms behind their backs. They didn't struggle. Struggling only made it worse. High Commander Draven stood in the observation gallery, all 4 of his arms folded across his massive chest. His blue skin had darkened to navy with age, 300 years of loyal service to the Empire. 300 years of maintaining order across 10,000 star systems. He'd seen this scene 1,000 times. It never bothered him anymore. "Officer Lyra," his voice rumbled through the comm system like distant thunder. "Proceed." In the control booth, a young Zalani female's hand trembled over the activation panel. Officer Lyra was 25. She'd been assigned to Nexus 7 for 3 years. She knew the rules, she followed orders. But these weren't strangers in that chamber. She'd grown up with 2 of them in the worker communes of Zelios 9. "Officer Lyra," Draven's voice again, patient, almost kind. "The Empire requires order. You understand this." Lyra's purple eyes burned with tears she couldn't let fall. She pressed the button. The violet light intensified. The Zalani workers screamed. It lasted 8 seconds. Then silence. Draven nodded satisfied. Another production quota missed. Another example made. The other workers would be more motivated tomorrow. This was how civilization functioned. This was how peace was maintained. "Order requires sacrifice," he said to Lyra through the comm. "You'll understand when you're older. Chaos is the alternative. I've seen chaos. This is mercy compared to chaos." Lyra said nothing. She stared at her hands. They were shaking. Draven left the observation gallery and walked through the pristine corridors of Nexus 7. The station was a masterpiece of Catherian engineering, 5 miles across, orbiting a neutron star, housing 12,000 personnel from 7 different species. Everything had its place. Everyone knew their role. Catherians commanded, the others obeyed. It was the natural order of things. He entered the command center just as the proximity alarms began their soft chime. His primary aide, a crystalline named Vex, turned from the sensor console with something like surprise in his harmonic voice. "Commander, unknown vessel entering our sector, grid 77 Alpha." Draven's red eyes narrowed. In 300 years, nothing surprised him anymore. Pirates knew better than to approach Imperial stations. Rebels had been crushed decades ago. The borders were secure. Identification: "None in our database, sir. The design is unusual." Draven crossed to the main display with long measured strides. The view screen showed exactly what Vex had described unusual. The ship was long and sleek, painted pure white with strange markings along its hull. No visible weapon ports, no slave quarters that he could detect. The energy signature was odd, powerful, but contained in a way that made no engineering sense. "Open a channel," Draven ordered, "and bring weapons online. Standard first contact protocol." The communications officer worked his console. A moment later, the screen flickered. Draven stepped backward without meaning to. The creature on the screen looked almost Catherian. Almost, 2 arms instead of 4, strange reddish hair on her head cut short and practical. Most shocking of all, she was clearly female, and she was clearly in command. No female commanded ships in civilized space. It violated every natural law Draven knew. "This is Captain Alara Voss of the United Earth vessel Prometheus." The creature spoke perfect galactic standard, her accent precise and educated. "We represent the Earth Federation. We come seeking trade relationships and diplomatic contact." Draven found his voice after a long pause. "I am High Commander Draven of the Catherian Empire. You will identify your species and state your origin coordinates." The female Alara smiled slightly. Her teeth were white and even. Predator teeth, Draven thought with sudden unease. "We are humans, from the planet Earth. We've traveled 847 light-years to make peaceful contact with your civilization." Murmurs filled the command center. The coordinates she'd mentioned pointed to a dead zone, a region of space their surveys had marked as uninhabitable 2 centuries ago. No planets, no resources, nothing. "Impossible," Draven said flatly. "Our scans show no habitable worlds in that region." Alara's smile widened just a fraction. "Perhaps your scans need updating, Commander. We request permission to dock at one of your stations. We have gifts and scientific data to share." Draven's mind worked through the calculations. A single ship, a species that clearly didn't understand galactic politics or proper social hierarchy. They seemed primitive, using only 1 vessel for first contact instead of a proper battle fleet. But something about the way Alara looked at him through the view screen made his skin prickle. She wasn't afraid. She should have been afraid. Very well, Draven decided. You may dock at Station Nexus 7. You will surrender all weapons and submit to standard integration protocol for new species. Alara's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her blue-green eyes. Something cold. Integration protocol, she asked quietly. All new species must be evaluated for their proper place in the galactic order. Draven explained, his tone patient. He'd given this speech before to countless primitives who didn't understand civilization. Some are suitable for labor, others for military service, a few for technical work. Do not worry, you will be given positions that match your abilities. It is the greatest honor in the galaxy. The silence on the comm stretched for 5 full seconds. When Alara spoke again, her voice was very calm, very measured. I see, and if we refuse this? Integration protocol. Draven laughed. The sound came out like grinding metal. Refuse? Why would anyone refuse the chance to serve the Empire? Captain Voss, your species is clearly young, inexperienced. You'll learn. Everyone does in time. We'll dock at your station, Alara said. Her eyes never left Draven's face. We look forward to meeting you in person, Commander. The transmission ended. The command center erupted in chatter. Draven silenced them with a gesture from all 4 arms. Prepare a full diplomatic reception, he ordered, and alert security. These humans seem unusually proud for primitives. They may need to be taught humility. But even as he gave the orders, unease settled in his chest like cold stone. The way Alara had looked at him, the complete absence of fear, the strange confidence in her smile. 300 years of service had taught Draven to trust his instincts, and his instincts were screaming that something was very, very wrong. 3 hours later, docking bay Theta 5. Draven stood with an honor guard of 20 Catherian soldiers, each one 8 feet tall and armed with energy rifles. Representatives from the other member species of the Empire lined the walls. Crystalline observers, aquatic mere in their environmental suits, 3 void dwellers who existed half-phased between dimensions. Everyone wanted to see the new primitives. Everyone wanted to watch the integration protocol begin. The airlock hissed open. Captain Alara Voss stepped through, and Draven revised every assumption he'd made. She was smaller than any Catherian, barely 6 feet tall, slender, built for speed rather than strength. But the way she moved, professional, confident, her eyes swept the docking bay with the trained alertness of a combat veteran cataloging threats and exits in 2 seconds. Behind her came 5 other humans. 2 were obviously soldiers despite carrying no visible weapons. They had the same hard-eyed awareness as Alara, the same controlled grace. One was a man with gray hair and a scar along his jaw, Commander Garrett Cole, according to the manifest. The other was a blonde woman in a pristine white uniform who couldn't have been older than 35. The remaining 3 appeared to be scientists or diplomats, but even they moved with an unsettling competence. Hi, Commander Draven. Alara stepped forward with a slight bow that somehow managed to convey respect without submission. Thank you for welcoming us to your station. This is an historic moment for both our peoples. Welcome to the Catherian Empire, Draven replied with formal stiffness. You are the first of your species to reach civilized space. Come, the Council awaits your evaluation. Alara looked around the docking bay. Her gaze lingered on a group of Zilani workers loading cargo under armed guard. Her expression remained neutral, but Draven saw Commander Cole tense slightly. We're honored, Alara said quietly. We hope this is the beginning of a long friendship between our species. Draven gestured toward the station interior with 2 of his arms. Come, you'll learn your place soon enough. They walked through Nexus 7's corridors in silence. Alara and her team observed everything. The rigid hierarchy, the armed guards overseeing every work crew, the clear division between the Catherian officers and the other species who scrubbed floors, carried supplies, performed maintenance under watchful eyes. Your station is impressive, Alara commented, as they passed a group of crystalline beings polishing the floors while Catherian guards monitored them. How long did it take to build? 40 years, Draven replied with pride. Order brings efficiency. Every species has found their proper role. Soon humans will find theirs as well. The blonde woman, Dr. Helena Frost, according to her uniform tag, spoke quietly to Alara in what must have been their native language. The station's translation systems caught only fragments, but Draven heard the tone. Anger. Disgust. Let them be displeased, Draven thought. They would learn to accept their place. Every species did given time, given discipline, given no other choice. The council chamber doors opened before them with a hydraulic hiss. The chamber was vast, with a curved ceiling that disappeared into shadows above. 7 massive chairs formed a semicircle in the center, each one designed for a different species. Draven took his place in the largest chair, while representatives from the other member races filled the others. Captain Alara Voss and her team stood in the center of the circle. She looked calm. Commander Cole kept his hands loose at his sides, his eyes constantly moving. The others showed no fear. Most new species trembled during their first evaluation. These humans stood like they were at a business meeting. Humans of Earth, Draven's voice echoed through the chamber with formal weight. You stand before the Galactic Council rulers of this sector of space. We will now determine your species' role in our great empire. Alara stepped forward slightly. With respect, High Commander, we didn't come here to be evaluated for service. We came seeking diplomatic relations between equals. A sound like breaking glass came from the crystalline representative. Laughter. The Void Dwellers' forms shimmered with amusement. Even the normally stoic aquatic mirror bubbled in their tanks. Equals, Draven let disbelief color his voice. Captain Voss, you arrive in a single ship from an unknown world. You speak of a quality child. Your entire species could not build one deck of our smallest warship. Alara's expression remained polite, maddeningly polite. Perhaps we could discuss an exchange of scientific knowledge instead. We've made some interesting discoveries during our journey here. Science. The crystalline representative's harmonics carried condescension. What could primitives know that we have not mastered for millennia? Before Alara could answer, alarms began echoing through the station. Draven touched a control on his chair's armrest. A holographic display appeared showing the station's industrial section. Perfect timing, Draven thought with satisfaction. A demonstration of imperial efficiency. The display showed Catherian guards surrounding a group of Zilani workers. The small, gray-skinned beings huddled together in obvious terror as the guard captain read charges against them. These workers failed to meet their production quotas for the 3rd time this cycle, the guard captain announced. His voice came through clearly. The penalty is death, to encourage the others to work harder. Draven watched Alara's face. She went very still. Commander Cole's hand moved slightly toward where a weapon would normally hang. The other humans exchanged glances that spoke volumes even without words. You're going to execute them, Alara said quietly. Not a question, a statement. For not working fast enough. Of course, Draven replied. This was basic Imperial policy. Why did she seem confused? Inferior species must be motivated properly. Fear of death ensures maximum productivity. It's simple, effective economics. On the display, the guards raised their energy weapons. The Zilani workers began to cry. They called out names, families, children, mothers. The sounds were pitiful and entirely predictable. Stop this! Alara's voice cut through the chamber like a blade. Draven paused the execution with a gesture. He looked at Alara with something like curiosity. Stop, these are workers, not people. They exist to serve their betters. This is justice. This is order. The natural way of things. They are intelligent beings with families and lives, Alara said. She took a step closer to Draven's chair. Her eyes had gone cold as winter stars. You have no right to murder them. Murder, Draven leaned forward. Captain Voss, this is civilization. When your species joins our empire, you will learn to appreciate such efficiency. Alara's voice dropped to something soft and very dangerous. Our species will never join an empire built on slavery and murder. You will, Draven said confidently. He'd heard this resistance before from every species that later bent the knee. All species do once they understand the alternative. He nodded to the guards stationed around the chamber. Perhaps a demonstration of what happens to those who refuse our generous offer would be educational. 20 Catherian guards moved toward the humans with casual arrogance. They were 3 times larger than any human. They carried energy weapons and wore personal shield generators. They had broken the will of 100 species across 300 years. They had never met humans before. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. Commander Garrett Cole moved so fast that most of the council members couldn't follow his motion. The first guard found his weapon flying across the room before he realized Cole had touched him. The second guard managed to activate his shield, but Cole grabbed the generator from his belt and crushed it in his bare hands like paper. The sound of breaking metal echoed through the chamber. The third guard got his weapon halfway raised before Cole's fist connected with his helmet. The crunch of shattering composite armor was sickeningly loud. The guard collapsed. His helmet had a fist-shaped dent in it. The humans' diplomatic team had scattered to defensive positions with smooth, practiced efficiency. Dr. Helena Frost produced a device from her coat and activated it. The chamber's electronics began sparking and dying. Automated defense systems tried to target the humans, but found their sensors scrambled, their targeting computers corrupted. Lieutenant James Rodriguez, one of the scientists, somehow produced a compact weapon from absolutely nowhere and aimed it at the ceiling-mounted plasma cannons. "Nobody move." Alara's voice carried absolute authority through the sudden chaos. The chamber froze. Commander Cole stood calmly among three unconscious guards. He wasn't even breathing hard. He looked at Draven with cold professional eyes. "We didn't come here to fight," Alara said into the silence. "But we won't be threatened either." Draven stared at Cole, at the demolished guards, at the casual, almost bored competence with which this smaller, supposedly primitive human had neutralized three trained Catherian soldiers in less than 10 seconds. "Impossible," Draven whispered. "No species can match Catherian strength without technology. We are the strongest." "Humans evolved on a death world," Cole said simply. His voice was flat, stating a fact. "We got strong by surviving things that would kill most species before breakfast." Alara touched a small device on her wrist. "Prometheus, this is the captain. We have a diplomatic incident. Prepare for emergency departure." "Wait." Draven stood from his chair, all four arms spread wide in a gesture that was half command, half plea. "You cannot simply leave. The council has not dismissed you." Alara looked around the circle of alien faces. Each one showed varying degrees of shock, outrage, or fear. She shook her head slowly. "The council was about to murder 6 innocent beings for the crime of being tired," she said. "Then you tried to threaten us into slavery. High Commander, we're done here. If you leave now," the Void Dweller representative whispered, its voice like wind through dead trees, "you declare war on the Empire. We will hunt down your primitive world and burn it to ash." Ilara smiled. It was not a friendly expression. It was the smile of someone holding cards nobody else could see. "You're welcome to try," she said softly, "but I should warn you about something." "What?" Draven demanded. His mind was racing, trying to process what had just happened, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong so fast. "The Prometheus isn't an exploration ship," Alara said as her team began moving toward the door in a smooth tactical withdrawal. "It's a diplomatic vessel. We only bring those when we already know what we're going to find." The humans reached the door. Commander Cole was the last to leave. He turned back and looked at the circle of shocked alien faces. His voice was very quiet when he spoke, very certain. "You have no idea what you just started," he said. "We are not your subjects. We will not bow to tyrants. Humanity has dealt with species like yours before. We know exactly how to handle bullies." Then the humans were gone, their footsteps echoing in the silent corridors beyond. Draven stood frozen. His mind tried to make sense of what had happened. Failed, tried again, failed again. "Guards," he finally roared. "Stop them! Seal the docking bay! Deployed all security forces!" But the station's security systems weren't responding. Dr. Frost's device had done more damage than anyone realized. By the time they manually overrode the lockouts, by the time they reached the docking bay, the Prometheus was already powering up its engines. Lieutenant Zek, a young sensor officer, stared at his console with wide eyes. "Sir, the ship's energy readings are spiking beyond our sensors' ability to measure. They're moving into the red. Into the sir, this is impossible." "What's impossible?" Draven demanded. "They're preparing to undock. The procedure should take hours." "They're doing it in..." Zek checked his readings again, not believing them. 6 minutes. "They're doing it in 6 minutes." On the docking bay's main view screen, Draven watched the human ship pull away from Nexus 7 with impossible grace. No species could detach that quickly without risking catastrophic structural damage. No species had engines that responsive. A communication channel opened. Alara Voss's face appeared on the screen one last time. "High Commander Draven," she said formally. Her expression was cold as the void between stars. "When you attack our world, and we know you will remember this moment, remember that we offered you friendship, and you chose to threaten us instead." She leaned closer to her camera. Her eyes seemed to look directly into Draven's soul. "Humanity does not forgive, and we never forget." The transmission ended. The Prometheus vanished into hyperspace with a flash of light so bright that every sensor on Nexus 7 temporarily blinded. When they recovered, the ship was gone. Only empty space remained where it had been. In the council chamber, the 7 representatives sat in stunned silence. "What have we done?" the Void Dweller finally whispered. Draven's 4 fists clenched with rage that barely covered his growing fear. "We have encountered a species that does not know its place. We will teach them, as we have taught every upstart species before them. He activated the general communication system with shaking hands. This is High Commander Draven. Prepare a second fleet for immediate deployment. 12 dreadnoughts, full combat loadout. We will visit this Earth and show these humans what happens to those who defy the Empire. The orders went out. Within hours, the second fleet would assemble. Within days, they would reach human space. Within a week, this insult would be avenged. But even as Draven gave the orders, something cold was growing in his chest. Something that felt uncomfortably like doubt. The ease with which the humans had disabled his guards. The casual way they'd neutralized the station's defenses. The impossible energy readings from their ship. And worst of all, the complete absence of fear in Captain Alara Voss's eyes. She hadn't been afraid because she'd known something. Something that Draven didn't. For the first time in his 300 years of loyal service, High Commander Draven wondered if the Catherian Empire had finally met something it couldn't conquer. On the display screen, still showing the station's industrial section, the Zalani workers waited for their execution. Forgotten in the case of first contact gone catastrophically wrong. Officer Lara stood in the control booth, her hands still trembling over the activation panel she'd been ordered to press again. But now she was thinking about the human female captain, the one who'd said the words Lyra had never dared to think. They are intelligent beings with families and lives. You have no right to murder them. For the first time in her 25 years, Lyra wondered if there might be a different way, a better way, a free way. 72 hours later, Sol System, Earth. The second fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 12 Imperial dreadnoughts, each one 5 miles long, each one carrying enough firepower to crack a planet's crust. They arranged themselves in a battle wedge weapons-charging shields at maximum. High Commander Draven stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Conquest. Around him, his crew worked with efficient precision. Navigator, weapons officer, tactical, communications, everyone at their station, everyone ready. This was the fleet that had crushed rebellions across 3 sectors. These humans would learn respect quickly. Approaching the coordinates now, sir, reported Navigator Thane, his voice carrying barely suppressed excitement. This would be his first planetary conquest. Excellent. Bring us out of hyperspace and begin scanning for the human homeworld. Draven settled into his command chair. Prepare to broadcast surrender demands. The fleet emerged from hyperspace. Draven expected to see a single primitive world with perhaps a few orbital platforms, maybe some early-stage industrialization, the usual marks of a species just beginning to reach for the stars. What appeared on his screens made him question his own eyes. Sir, Thane whispered, the entire system is inhabited. Instead of one world, the sensors showed dozens of planets covered with cities. Massive space habitats floated between them like artificial moons, each one the size of a small planet. Industrial platforms stretched across entire asteroid belts, processing raw materials on a scale that dwarfed anything in Imperial space. This wasn't a primitive homeworld. This was a civilization that spanned a solar system. Impossible, Draven muttered. Our scouts surveyed this region. They reported nothing. Sir, called out Sensor Operator Crix, her voice shaking. Energy signatures approaching from multiple vectors. A lot of them. The main display changed to show the tactical situation. Draven felt his blood turn cold. Ships were emerging from behind planets, from asteroid fields, from what looked like empty space stealth fields, deactivating, revealing vessels that had been invisible moments before. Hundreds of them. The human fleet was enormous. How many? Draven demanded. Crick's voice cracked. 237 vessels detected so far, sir. They're still appearing. Every ship is... They're all larger than our dreadnoughts. Sir, they're all larger. Draven stared at the tactical display, at the impossible numbers, at the sleek, predatory design of the human warships that surrounded his fleet with casual precision. They'd moved into position before his sensors had even detected them. They'd been waiting. A communication request appeared on his screen. Against every instinct screaming at him to flee, Draven accepted it. The human who appeared was older than Captain Voss. Gray hair cut military short. Stars on her uniform marking her as a very high-ranking officer. She looked at Draven with calm, intelligent eyes that held no surprise, no fear, no uncertainty. She looked at him like a chess player watching an opponent walk into a trap. I am Fleet Admiral Victoria Sterling of the Earth Defense Force, she said in perfect galactic standard. You have entered human space without permission and with obvious hostile intent. State your business here. Draven found his voice. I am High Commander Draven of the Catherian Empire. Your species has committed crimes against the galactic order. We are here to bring you to justice. Admiral Sterling's expression didn't change. What crimes was assault on Imperial personnel, threatening council representatives, refusing to accept your proper place in galactic civilization. Draven leaned forward, trying to regain the authority that was slipping away from him like water through his fingers. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick. The human admiral was quiet for a moment. When she spoke, her voice was very soft, very certain. High Commander Draven, do you know anything about human history? Why would I study the history of primitives? Because Admiral Sterling said, we are a species that survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We survived world wars fought with weapons that could have destroyed our entire civilization. Draven waved dismissively with two of his arms. Ancient history, irrelevant. You face the Empire now. We turned our deadliest weapons into tools for exploration, Sterling continued as if he hadn't spoken. We took the same technology we used to build planet-killing bombs and used it to reach the stars. High Commander, we have been preparing for this moment for 300 years. Preparing for what moment? Draven asked. But he already knew. He already understood. Admiral Sterling's smile was cold as the space between galaxies. The moment we met a galactic empire built on slavery and murder, she said. You want a war, Commander? You just declared war against a species that has been getting ready to fight tyrants since before your empire existed. The communication ended. Warning alarms immediately began screaming across Draven's bridge. Sir, Crick shouted over the noise. The human fleet is moving to attack formation. They're surrounding us. Sir, we're completely surrounded. Draven looked at his tactical display. Looked at the 12 dreadnoughts of his proud Second Fleet. Looked at the 240 human warships closing in like wolves around wounded prey. And for the first time in 300 years of loyal service to the Catherian Empire, High Commander Draven felt something he'd almost forgotten existed. He felt fear. All ships, he commanded. His voice came out steady despite the terror clawing at his chest. Prepare for battle. Target their largest vessels. Show these primitives the power of the Empire. But even as he gave the order, even as his weapons charged and his shields reached maximum power, Draven knew the truth that his mind refused to accept. They hadn't kicked the door to find primitives hiding in fear. They'd kicked the door to find war gods waiting in patience. And now the war gods were awake. The Conquest's main gun swiveled toward the nearest human ship, a sleek vessel that looked nothing like proper military design. Too smooth, too elegant. No visible armor plating, no jutting weapon batteries, no obvious weak points. It looked like a sculpture, like art. Draven didn't care what it looked like. He cared that it was about to die. Firing, announced Weapons Officer Drell. The Dreadnought's primary energy cannons unleashed hell. 6 beams of concentrated plasma, each one capable of vaporizing a mountain, converged on the human ship in a display of raw destructive power that had ended planetary sieges in minutes. The energy struck dead center. The light was so bright that every screen on every Imperial ship automatically dimmed to protect their crew's eyes. When the light faded, the human ship floated there, completely undamaged. Not a scratch, not a scorch mark, not even a dimming of its running lights. What? Draven stared at his displays. His mind refused to process what his eyes were showing him. That's impossible. Nothing can withstand direct fire from Imperial dreadnought cannons. Nothing. Sir, Crick said in a voice full of pure terror, the humans are returning fire. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations, assuming any Imperial academy survived what was coming. The human weapons didn't look like much. No massive energy beams. No obvious projectiles. Just small, fast objects that seemed to appear from nowhere and move with their own intelligence. The first missile hit the Imperial dreadnought Guardian amidships. The explosion was so bright that every screen on every ship automatically dimmed to maximum. The shockwave rippled through space like a stone dropped in still water. When the light faded, the Guardian was gone. Not damaged, not crippled, not adrift and burning. Gone. Completely vaporized. 8,000 crew. 5 miles of the Empire's finest warship. Erased from existence in a single heartbeat. Shields up, evasive maneuvers, Draven screamed. But the human weapons followed their targets no matter how they twisted and turned. The missiles seemed to think for themselves, predicting moves and adjusting course faster than any computer should be able to calculate. The Imperial Dreadnought Thunder lasted 18 seconds. The missile phased through its shields like they weren't even there, struck the reactor core, and turned the mighty warship into expanding wing and twisted metal. The Retribution managed 23 seconds before a human torpedo found a weak spot in its armor and detonated inside the ship. The Dreadnought broke in half, Both pieces exploded separately. Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can count them. Navigator Thane's voice cracked with panic. The young officer's first conquest was turning into a massacre. How are they doing this? How Draven watched his proud fleet being destroyed with casual efficiency. The humans weren't even using their full force. Most of their ships hung back watching as if this was some kind of training exercise. As if the Second Fleet, the fleet that had conquered 40 star systems, was nothing more than target practice. All ships, Draven ordered, his voice hoarse. Retreat. Emergency jump to hyperspace. Now. Sir, Crix reported, the humans are jamming our navigation systems. We can't calculate a safe jump. If we try, we'll scatter across half the galaxy. Some ships won't survive the transition. On the tactical display, more Imperial ships died. The humans attacked with weapons that ignored shields armor, that self-repaired faster than it could be damaged, and tactical coordination that made the Empire's best military minds look like children playing with toys. Admiral Sterling's voice came over the communication system again. Her face appeared on every screen in what remained of Draven's fleet. This is your last chance, High Commander, she said. Surrender now, and we'll allow your surviving crews to return to Imperial space with a message. Draven looked at his display. Of his 12 mighty dreadnoughts, only 4 remained. The battle had lasted less than 30 minutes. Less than 30 minutes to destroy 300 years of Imperial military supremacy. What message? He asked weakly. Tell your council that Earth is under the protection of the human coalition, Sterling said. Tell them that any attack on coalition worlds or citizens will be met with appropriate response. And tell them, she paused and her eyes went very cold. Tell them that we know where all their worlds are, and we're coming to free every slave in their empire. The transmission ended. A moment later, the jamming field around Draven's remaining ships disappeared. Navigator, Draven said in a voice that sounded like an old man's, like someone who just watched everything he believed in shatter. Calculate jump coordinates for home. Emergency speed. Yes, sir, Thane replied. What do I tell the council about our mission status? Draven stared at the tactical display where human ships continued their patrol of the system as if nothing had happened. As if destroying the Empire's Second Fleet had been routine maintenance. Tell them, he said slowly, each word tasting like ash, that we have awakened something terrible. Tell them that these humans are not primitives from a dead world. They are a force that has been planning this war for centuries. Tell them, he stopped, started again. Tell them we should have chosen friendship. The 4 surviving Imperial ships jumped to hyperspace carrying news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Behind them, the human fleet returned to its patrol routes, protecting a civilization that spanned hundreds of worlds and countless billions of free citizens. Earth Defense Command, Fleet Admiral Victoria Sterling's office. Sterling stood at the massive observation window, looking out at the orbital shipyards where humanity's true fleet waited. Not the 240 ships they'd shown Draven. Those were just the Defense Force. The Greeting Committee. The real fleet, all 3,400 ships, waited in deeper orbits in asteroid bases in stealth fields that made them invisible to every sensor system the Empire possessed. 300 years of preparation. 300 years of watching. 300 years of building in secret while pretending to be harmless merchants. The door chimed. Sterling turned to see a woman in a combat uniform enter, red hair tied back. Blue-green eyes that had seen things that aged a person inside. Captain, no Admiral now. Alara Voss. Admiral Sterling, Alara said formally. The council approved my promotion. Admiral Voss, Sterling smiled. And your new assignment? Liberation Fleet, 800 ships. Orders to free the slave world, starting with the outer territories. Alara's expression hardened. We begin in 72 hours. Good. Sterling pulled up a holographic star map. Red markers indicated Imperial slave worlds. There were hundreds of them. The Empire is mobilizing their great fleet. 10,000 ships. They're desperate. 10,000 ships crewed by people who don't want to fight for them, Alara observed. Half their fleet are slaves pressed into military service. Their families held hostage to ensure compliance. Which is why Operation Liberation will work. Sterling expanded the map showing planned attack vectors. We don't need to destroy the Empire. We just need to show their slaves that freedom is possible. The rest will collapse from within. Alara studied the map in silence. Finally, she asked the question that had been burning in her mind since Nexus 7. Admiral, how long have we really known about them? Sterling turned from the window. Her expression was ancient, weary, carrying secrets that aged the soul. 300 years ago, our first deep space probe reached this sector. It detected the Empire's transmissions. We listened. We watched. We learned everything about them before they even knew we existed. And we've been preparing ever since. Every ship we built had a secret. Every civilian transport was designed to convert to military configuration in hours. Every cargo hauler carried concealed weapons. Every human who went through civic service was actually receiving 2 years of military training. Sterling's voice carried a weight of decades. We knew this day would come. We knew we'd eventually meet them, and we knew exactly what they were. Slavers and tyrants. Yes, Sterling's eyes reflected the orbital shipyards beyond the window. We remembered our own history, our own tyrants, our own wars. We swore we'd never let it happen again. Not to us, not to anyone else if we could prevent it. Alara looked at the red markers on the map. Hundreds of worlds, billions of slaves, people who'd never known freedom, who'd been born into chains and would die in chains unless someone broke them. We're going to save them, Alara said quietly. Not a question, a promise. All of them, Sterling confirmed. Every single one. And then we're going to show the galaxy that there's a better way. That civilization doesn't require slavery. That strength doesn't require cruelty. She touched a control. The hologram shifted, showing a single planet, Zerion Prime. 20 million Zilani slaves working in industrial facilities under armed guard. This is your first target, Sterling said. Liberation Fleet will jump in 72 hours. You will free these people, and then you'll move to the next world, and the next, until every slave in this galaxy is free. Ilara saluted. It was a gesture of respect between equals, not subordinate to superior. It will be done, Admiral. I know it will. Sterling returned the salute. The Prometheus tested them. They failed. Now we show them the consequences of that failure. Day 3, Zerion Prime, Industrial Sector 7. The Liberation Fleet dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. 800 warships arranged in attack patterns that had been practiced 10,000 times in simulation. Every captain knew their role. Every weapons officer had memorized their targets. Every communication specialist was ready. They'd trained for this moment for 300 years. Admiral Ilara Voss stood on the bridge of the USS Liberation, the Prometheus renamed and reconfigured for war. Around her, the crew worked with calm efficiency. No panic, no hesitation. They were ready. All ships battle formation Delta 7, Ilara commanded. Begin orbital bombardment. Precision strikes only. I want 0 civilian casualties. Target military installations exclusively. Yes, ma'am, Tactical Officer Williams responded. Acquiring targets now. 12 military bases detected on the surface. Imperial garrison strength approximately 40,000 troops. Fire when ready. The Liberation Fleet opened fire. But these weren't the crude plasma beams of Imperial technology. These were pinpoint kinetic strikes, tungsten rods accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, guided by AI systems that could calculate wind patterns, structural weak points, and collateral damage in microseconds. The first military base vanished in a flash of light. The second followed 5 seconds later. The third, fourth, fifth, precise surgical strikes that left the surrounding civilian areas completely untouched. On the surface, Imperial troops ran for cover that didn't exist. Their shields were designed to stop energy weapons. They did nothing against relativistic kinetic projectiles. Commander Garrett Cole stood beside Ilara watching the tactical display. 6 bases destroyed, 6 remaining. Time elapsed 4 minutes. Continue bombardment, and Cole, prep your landing teams. We're going down as soon as the last base is neutralized. Yes, ma'am. Teams are ready. Cole touched his comm. All units prepare for planetary insertion. Remember your training. We're here to free people, not conquer them. Anyone who surrenders gets treated with full Geneva Protocol standards. Sir, one of the younger Marines asked over the comm, what if they don't surrender? Cole's voice was flat without emotion. Then we remind them why humanity doesn't lose wars. Zerion Prime surface. Primary industrial complex. Officer Lyra stood in the guard tower, watching the workers below through the observation window. She'd been transferred here from Nexus 7 after the Prometheus incident, a punishment assignment for her moment of hesitation with the execution button. The complex sprawled before her 5 square miles of factories, refineries, and processing plants, where 20 million Zilani labored under constant surveillance. 18-hour shifts. Dormitories that crammed 100 beings into spaces meant for 20. Synthesized protein that barely sustained life. 3 generations had known nothing else. This was all they understood. Then the sky began to burn. Lyra watched through the tower window as military bases exploded one by one. Not the slow bombardments of siege warfare, instant obliteration delivered with impossible precision. No warning. No chance to respond. Just light and then nothing. Massive transport vessels appeared in low orbit, escorted by fighters that moved like predators. The comm system crackled to life. A female voice speaking perfect galactic standard. Imperial forces on Zerion Prime, this is Admiral Alara Voss of the Human Liberation Fleet. Your military installations have been neutralized. You have two choices. Lay down your weapons and surrender. You will be treated fairly according to established humanitarian protocols. Or continue fighting. We will respond with overwhelming force. Lyra looked around the guard tower. 5 other Catherian guards, all armed, all uncertain. They looked at each other with questions no one could answer. The senior guard, a veteran named Kral, activated his comm. Command, what are our orders? Static. The command structure was gone, vaporized in the opening seconds. I said, the human admiral's voice continued, you have 2 minutes to decide. For every minute you delay, more of your soldiers will die, and the Zalani you've been oppressing will be freed regardless of your choice. You're not fighting to win, you're just choosing how many of your own people die today. Kral looked at Lyra, at the other guards. What do we do? Lyra thought about the 6 Zalani she'd executed on Nexus 7, about her trembling hands, about the human captain who'd said words Lyra had never dared think. They are intelligent beings with families and lives, about how certain High Commander Draven had been that the Empire was invincible. We surrender, Lyra said quietly. What? Kral stared at her. We surrender, right now, before more people die. Lyra removed her sidearm and placed it on the console. The Empire is finished. We just haven't admitted it yet. One by one, the other guards followed her example. Weapons on the console, hands raised. Across Zerion Prime, the same scene repeated thousands of times. Some Imperial troops fought, died quickly, efficiently, without mercy. But most chose life over pride. The human landing craft descended through atmosphere and touched down in the industrial complex's central plaza. Ramps lowered. Marines in powered armor deployed with textbook precision, securing the landing zone in seconds. Then came medical teams, relief workers, people carrying food, water, supplies. Admiral Alara Voss walked down the ramp without armor, without visible weapons, with only Commander Cole at her side. She walked directly to the nearest group of Zalani workers who'd gathered in confused, frightened clusters. An elderly Zalani male stepped forward, gray skin scarred by decades of industrial labor. Purple eyes holding no hope, only exhausted resignation. Are you our new masters? He asked in broken galactic standard. Alara knelt down. The Zalani were only 4 feet tall so she could meet his eyes directly. No, she said gently, we're not your masters. We're here to take you home. You're free now, all of you. The Empire's rule here is over. The Zalani stared at her. His mind couldn't process the words. Free, the concept had no meaning. He'd been a slave his entire life. His parents had been slaves. His grandparents had been slaves. I don't understand, he whispered. You will. Alara stood and activated a device on her wrist. A hologram materialized, showing images from orbit. Human ships by the hundreds. And beyond them, more vessels, transports designed for mass evacuation, hospital ships, supply freighters loaded with food and medical equipment. We're evacuating everyone who wants to leave, Alara explained. 20 million people. We have ships waiting. We have worlds where you can live without fear. Without guards, without chains, it's your choice. Stay here and rebuild as free citizens or come with us to start a new life. But either way, she looked around at the crowd now numbering thousands. You'll never be slaves again. I promise you that. A sound began in the crowd, quiet at first. A single Zalani female crying, then another, then more. The sound grew, spread, became a wave of emotions suppressed for generations. They wept. They collapsed. They held each other. 3 generations of suffering, breaking open like a dam finally breached. Alara felt something crack in her own chest. She thought of Emily, of Helios Station, of 40,000 people dying while the Galactic Council voted not to help. A small figure pushed through the crowd, a Zalani child no more than 12 years old with wide purple eyes full of terror and desperate hope. She ran to Alara and stopped trembling. Is it true? The child asked in a tiny voice. We don't have to work anymore. We can go outside. We can see the sky. Alara knelt again, looked at this child who'd probably been born in the factories, who'd never known anything except industrial lights and 18-hour shifts and the constant fear of failing quotas. What's your name, sweetheart? Mira. Mira, that's a beautiful name. Alara pulled the child close, hugging her gently. Yes, it's true. You're free. You can see the sky whenever you want. You never have to work in a factory again. unless you choose to. Mira clung to her. My mother died last year in an accident. I don't have anyone. Alara's mind flashed to Emily, to the last time she'd held her sister, to the promise she'd made over Emily's grave that she'd never let this happen to anyone else if she could prevent it. You have someone now, Alara said softly. If you want, would you like to come with me? To Earth? Mira nodded frantically, still clinging tight. Commander Cole watched from a few feet away. His scarred face showed no emotion, but his eyes were wet. He'd been a soldier for 20 years. He'd seen every kind of horror war could produce. But this liberation, not conquest, this was something different. This was why they'd prepared for 300 years. This was why it mattered. Day 12. Zarn contested space. Battle Group 7. Admiral Alara Voss had freed Zerion Prime in 6 hours. The next world took 4. The third took 3. Word was spreading across the Empire faster than light-speed communication. The humans were coming. They were freeing slaves. They were winning. Now she faced a new problem. 200 Zarn warships blocked her path. The Zarn were warriors 9 feet tall, 4-armed, red-skinned, bred for combat by the Empire. They'd been pressed into military service, their families held hostage on their homeworld to ensure compliance. They were fighting not because they wanted to, but because they had no choice. Alara's 50 ships faced them across the void. Her tactical officer had calculated the battle. They'd win, but hundreds of Zarn would die. Hundreds of warriors who were as much slaves as the Zalani workers. Admiral, Cole said quietly, they're not responding to surrender demands. They're charging weapons. Alara looked at the tactical display, at the Zarn ships moving into attack formation, at the brave, desperate beings inside those ships who were about to die fighting for an empire that oppressed them. No, she thought, not like this. Helm hold position. Do not return fire under any circumstances. Alara activated the fleet-wide comm. All ships' weapons hold. I repeat, weapons hold. Ma'am, Cole looked at her with confusion. Trust me. Alara opened a communication channel, not to the Zarn commander alone, to every single ship in the Zarn fleet, every captain, every crew member, every warrior. When the channel connected, she didn't show tactical displays or weapon demonstrations. Instead, she showed them something else. Live footage from the Zarn homeworld, transmitted by a human stealth ship that had entered orbit 2 hours earlier. The footage showed Zarn cities, not under attack, under liberation. Human troops moving through streets with Zarn civilians cheering. Children running free. Detention facilities where families had been held hostage empty. Now prisoners freed, reunited with loved ones they thought dead. Elderly Zarn embracing their warrior sons and daughters through holocom links. Mothers holding children they hadn't seen in years. Fathers weeping with relief. Warriors of the Zarn, Alara said, her voice carrying to every ship. Your homeworld is free. Your families are safe. The hostages have been liberated. You're not fighting for them anymore. You're fighting for an empire that enslaved you. An empire that used your honor against you. An empire that ends today. She paused, letting them watch the footage, letting them see their families celebrating freedom. You have a choice, Alara continued. Fight us. Die for masters who never respected you. Or surrender. Join us. Go home to your families. Be the warriors you were meant to be, free warriors, not slaves. The choice is yours. We'll wait. The Zarn fleet held formation for 30 seconds, then 60, then 90, then one ship broke formation, powered down its weapons, transmitted a surrender signal, then another, and another, and another. 180 of the 200 Zarn ships surrendered within 5 minutes, their crews begging for safe passage home, for confirmation that their families were truly free. 20 ships didn't surrender, officers too loyal or too afraid to believe. They charged forward with battle cries that spoke of honor and glory and death. Ma'am, Cole said quietly. Orders. Alara's expression went cold. They made their choice. Destroy them, quickly. The battle lasted 8 minutes. 20 Zarn ships against 50 human warships. The outcome was never in doubt. The humans used relativistic kinetic weapons projectiles accelerated to 90% of light speed. At those velocities, mass became energy. Each impact released more power than a tactical nuclear weapon. The Zarn ships exploded one by one. Quick deaths. Merciful deaths, considering the alternative. When it was over, Alara opened a channel to the surrendered Zarn fleet. Thank you, she said simply. Your families are waiting for you. Safe journey home, warriors. And if you want, when you're ready, humanity could use allies like you. We're going to need help freeing the rest of this galaxy. The Zarn commander appeared on screen. A massive warrior named Krell, his red skin marked with honor scars from 100 battles. His eyes were wet. "Human Admiral," he said in a voice like grinding stone, "the Zarn remembered debts. You freed our families. You gave us honor again. When you need us," he placed all four fists over his heart's call, "we will come." The Zarn fleet turned for home. 180 ships full of warriors who'd been slaves that morning and were free that afternoon. Commander Cole shook his head in wonder. "We just turned an enemy fleet into allies without firing a shot. The Academy's going to study this for decades." "It's not strategy," Alara said quietly, watching the Zarn ships jump to hyperspace. "It's just treating people like people. The Empire forgot how to do that. We remembered." Day 30, Imperial Core Worlds. Strategic Command. The Emergency Council meeting had been running for 6 hours. 7 species representatives sat in the Grand Chamber on Catheria Prime, watching their empire collapse in real time. High Commander Draven stood before them, freshly promoted to Supreme Commander after the previous holder had committed ritual suicide in shame. He looked older than his years, 300 years of service, plus 30 days of watching everything he'd built crumble. "Update," Emperor Varkos demanded. The ruler of the Catherian Empire sat on his throne of carved bone, his 6 arms gripping the armrests with white-knuckled fury. Draven pulled up holographic displays. Red markers covered the map like a spreading infection. 57 slave worlds have been liberated. The humans attack with perfect intelligence. They know every military installation, every garrison strength, every defensive weakness. They strike with precision that eliminates our forces while preserving civilian infrastructure. "Casualties?" the crystalline representative asked. "On their side, minimal. On ours." Draven paused, the words tasting like poison. 75% of our military forces have been destroyed, captured, or defected. Yes, defected. Entire garrisons are surrendering without fighting. The humans are offering amnesty to common soldiers. They're only prosecuting officers for war crimes. "This is impossible," Varkos roared. "We are 10,000 star systems. They are one species." "They're more than one species now," Draven said quietly. He expanded the display. "Intelligence reports indicate the humans have been secretly allying with the oppressed species for decades, maybe centuries. They have 400 star systems. They command the loyalty of 43 species. Majesty, they're not invading us. They're liberating us, and our own people are helping them." Silence filled the chamber. "The Great Fleet," Varkos said desperately. 10,000 ships. Will crush them with numbers." "The Great Fleet is crewed largely by pressed slaves," Draven reminded him. "Their families are held hostage to ensure compliance. Majesty, what happens when those slaves learn their families have been freed? What happens when they realize they're fighting for an empire that enslaved them?" Varkos stood, all 6 arms raised in fury. "Then we'll make them fight. We'll hold more hostages. We'll execute dissenters. We'll lose," Draven interrupted. 300 years of discipline broke. 300 years of loyalty shattered. "We've already lost Majesty. We just haven't admitted it yet." "How dare you? They have technology 300 years ahead of ours. They have weapons we can't counter. They have perfect intelligence on our forces. They have the moral high ground because we're slavers and they're liberators. And worst of all," Draven looked around the council, "they have patience. They're not trying to conquer us quickly. They're systematically dismantling our empire piece by piece, turning our slaves into allies, showing everyone that freedom is possible." He pulled up another display, footage from liberated worlds. Zalani families reunited. Zarn warriors returning home. Aquatic mire swimming free in ocean habitats built by human engineers. "Look at this," Draven said. "Look at what they're doing. They're not destroying our worlds. They're healing them. They're building hospitals, schools, farms. They're treating former slaves like citizens, like people. They're destroying everything we've built," Varkos screamed. "No," Draven said softly. "We built nothing. We built chains. They're breaking chains. There's a difference." Varkos trembled with rage. "Assemble the Great Fleet. We'll make our last stand at Catheria Prime. If they want our homeworld, they'll have to burn it." "Majesty," Draven said carefully, "there are 14 billion civilians on this world. If we make our stand here, then 14 billion will die as martyrs to the Empire." Varkos's eyes had gone mad. 300 years of absolute power had not prepared him for defeat. His mind couldn't process it, couldn't accept it. Draven looked around the council, saw the same thing in every face. Fear, desperation. And in the younger members, doubt. The beginning of understanding that maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong. I'll assemble the fleet, Draven said quietly, but I won't sacrifice 14 billion innocents for pride. You'll do as I command, or you'll what? Execute me, go ahead. I've been preparing to die for 3 centuries, but I won't murder children to protect an empire built on slavery. Draven walked out of the council chamber. Behind him, Varko screamed orders that nobody followed. The empire was already dead. It just didn't know it yet. Day 45. Cytheria Prime High Orbit. The human fleet arrives. Admiral Elara Voss stood on the bridge of the USS Liberation, looking at the tactical display. The Great Fleet had assembled 10,000 warships surrounding Cytheria Prime like a steel fortress. Pressed into service were thousands of Zelani Meyer-Zarn and others, all fighting because their families were hostages. Her own fleet numbered 1,200 ships. Coalition forces, human vessels mixed with Zarn destroyers, Zelani cruisers, even some former Imperial ships that had defected. Behind her on Earth, Admiral Marcus Thorne commanded another 1,500 ships held in reserve, and scattered across 200 star systems, another 700 vessels waited as occupation and reconstruction forces. The humans hadn't revealed their full strength until this moment, until it mattered. Admiral, Tactical Officer Williams said, "The Great Fleet is moving to defensive formation around the planet. They're not attacking. They're waiting for us." "They're scared," Commander Cole observed. "They know what happened to the Second Fleet. They know we could crack this planet in days if we wanted to." "We don't want to," Elara said firmly. 14 billion civilians down there. Most of them have never committed any crime except being born Cytherian. We're not here to commit genocide." She opened a comm channel, not to Emperor Varkos, to every ship in the Great Fleet. "This is Admiral Elara Voss of the Human Liberation Fleet. We have no quarrel with common soldiers fighting under duress. We know many of you are slaves. We know your families are hostages. We're here to tell you your families are free now. We've spent the last 45 days liberating every slave world in your empire. Check your personal comms. Talk to your families. They're safe. You don't have to fight for masters anymore." She paused. Let them verify. Let them contact home. Across the Great Fleet, soldiers accessed personal comms they'd been forbidden to use. Contacted families they'd been told were in detention. Found messages waiting. Holocom recordings of loved ones in refugee camps in new homes, safe and free and alive. The weeping began, then the defections. One ship left formation, then 10, then 100, then thousands. Within an hour, 70% of the Great Fleet had powered down weapons and requested amnesty. The remaining 30% held formation. Die-hard loyalists, officers whose identities were too tied to imperial power to let go. Soldiers who'd committed such atrocities that they feared human justice. "Admiral," Cole said quietly, "fleet strength estimates. We're now facing 3,000 ships, all true believers. They will fight to the death." "I know." Elara touched a control on her command chair. "Admiral Thorne, we're ready for Phase 2. On the main view screen, space rippled, tore open, and something massive emerged from hyperspace. Platform Helios materialized in high orbit above Cytheria Prime, 30 kilometers long, ring-shaped with a central reactor that glowed like a captured star. 6 smaller versions orbited nearby, one for each member species of the old empire, a reminder that humanity could have destroyed them all. The platform was designed to do one thing: trigger stellar collapse, to turn a sun into a supernova, to kill everything in a solar system in a matter of hours. The Great Fleet went silent. Every sensor pointed at Helios. Every tactical computer running calculations that came back with the same impossible result. The humans had built weapons capable of destroying stars. Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne's face appeared on every screen. The 60-year-old veteran looked tired, sad, but absolutely certain. "Emperor Varkos," Thorne said in his deep, measured voice. "This is Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne, Earth Defense Force. The platform you see is Helios. We've built 7 of these over the past century. Each one is capable of collapsing your sun and killing everything in this system within 6 hours." He paused. "Let that sink in. You have 24 hours to surrender unconditionally. Disband your empire. Free every remaining slave. Submit to war crimes tribunals for officers who committed atrocities. Or we will activate Helios. We will give you time to evacuate civilians. But your sun will die and your homeworld will freeze, and the empire will end in ice and darkness." "You're bluffing!" Varkos' voice screamed over the comm. "No civilized species would use such a weapon. It's genocide." "You're right," Thorne said quietly. "It would be genocide, which is why we've built it but never used it. Unlike you, Emperor, we understand restraint. We understand that power without wisdom is tyranny. We've been tyrants. In our history, To each other. We didn't like it. His face filled every screen in the Catherian system. So yes, we can destroy your sun. We can kill 14 billion people. We have the power to commit the greatest genocide in galactic history, and we're choosing not to. That's what separates civilization from barbarism. Not the ability to destroy, but the wisdom to know when not to. Thorn leaned forward. 24 hours, Emperor. Choose wisely, because if you make us use this weapon, we will. But we'll spend the rest of our existence regretting it. We'll build monuments to the 14 billion who died because one man's pride mattered more than their lives. We'll teach our children what we did. We'll make sure history remembers the cost of your choice. The transmission ended. In the command center on Catheria Prime, Emperor Varkos stood alone. His council had fled. His guards had abandoned their posts. He stood in front of the throne he'd occupied for 200 years and felt the weight of 14 billion lives pressing down on him. A door opened. Supreme Commander Draven entered, flanked by 2 Zalani officers wearing coalition insignia. You, Varkos whispered. You dare, I dare, Draven said calmly, because I'm done watching people die for your pride. I'm done sacrificing innocence for the Empire. I should have done this 300 years ago. Varkos reached for a weapon. Draven moved faster, 4 arms against 6, experience against fury. The combat lasted 20 seconds. Draven won, but took a deep wound across his shoulder. It's over, Draven said, holding the defeated Emperor. Send the surrender, save the civilians, end this. Varkos looked at him with hatred and incomprehension. You're destroying everything. No, Draven said sadly. I'm saving what little can be saved. The Empire is already dead. You killed it the moment you chose pride over people. He activated the comm system. Broadcast to every ship in the Great Fleet and to the human forces watching from above. This is Supreme Commander Draven. Emperor Varkos is in custody. The Catherian Empire surrenders unconditionally. All ships stand down. All forces lay down arms. The war is over. In orbit, Admiral Alara Voss received the transmission. She looked at Commander Cole. Order Fleet Admiral Thorne to deactivate Helios. Stand down all weapons. Begin humanitarian relief operations. We have 14 billion people down there who need to see that we meant what we said. We're here to liberate, not conquer. Cole relayed the orders. Across the human fleet, weapons powered down. Medical ships and supply vessels moved forward. Relief workers prepared to deploy. Platform Helios began its shutdown sequence. The captured star at its heart dimmed, cooled. The weapon that could have killed a solar system went dark. Never fired, never used. Built to prove they could. Deactivated to prove they wouldn't. That was the difference. That was what made them civilized. Catheria Prime, Imperial Palace. 3 days after surrender. The throne room had been stripped of its grandeur. The carved bone throne, where Emperor Varkos had ruled for 2 centuries, sat empty, a relic of a dead age. In its place, temporary seating arranged in a circle. No hierarchies, no raised platforms, just equals facing equals. Supreme Commander Draven sat in one chair, his shoulder heavily bandaged. The wound would heal, but slowly. 300 years of loyal service had ended with him striking down his emperor. He should have felt shame. He felt only relief. Across from him sat Admiral Ilara Voss. Behind her stood Commander Cole, ever watchful. Around the circle sat representatives from 43 species, most of them former slaves, now free citizens of what was being called the Coalition of Free Worlds. And in a smaller chair flanked by human guards sat Emperor Varkos, diminished, powerless, awaiting judgment. The preliminary tribunal had convened to determine immediate protocols. The full war crimes trials would take years, but some decisions needed to be made now. Officer Lyra, no longer an officer, just Lyra, now stepped forward as the prosecution's first witness. The young Zalani female's voice shook slightly as she spoke, but her words were clear. I served under High Commander Draven for 3 years at Station Nexus 7. I was ordered to execute 6 Zalani workers who failed to meet production quotas. I pressed the button. I killed my own people because I was following orders. She looked at Draven. He told me it was necessary. That order required sacrifice. That chaos was the alternative. Draven met her gaze, nodded slowly. I did say that. I believed it. I was wrong. Varkos laughed a bitter, broken sound. Wrong, you weak fool. The Empire brought peace to 10,000 systems. We ended wars. We created order from chaos. That requires strength. That requires slavery. Lyra interrupted, her voice suddenly hard. My grandmother was born a slave. My mother was born a slave. I was born a slave. 3 generations who never knew freedom, Because the Empire decided we were inferior. Because you decided our lives mattered less than your order. She turned to face the circle of representatives. I request that former Emperor Varkos be tried for crimes against sentient beings, for genocide, for slavery, for the murder of billions over 3 centuries of imperial rule. The motion passed unanimously. 30 seconds of discussion. No debate necessary. Varkos would face justice. Full trials, legal representation, fair protocols established by the coalition. Everything the Empire had never given its victims. And what of me? Draven asked quietly. I served that Empire for 300 years. I gave the orders. I pressed the buttons. I am as guilty as he is. Alara stood, walked to stand before Draven, looked down at the massive alien who'd threatened her on Nexus 760 days ago, who'd learned, who'd changed. Supreme Commander Draven, she said formally, you are charged with war crimes committed during your service to the Catherian Empire. The evidence is overwhelming. Your own testimony condemns you. Draven bowed his head, accepted it. However, Alara continued, at the final moment you chose differently. You stopped Emperor Varkos from forcing a last stand that would have killed billions. You surrendered the Great Fleet. You saved 14 billion civilians on this world. That doesn't erase your crimes, but it matters. She looked at the circle of representatives. I recommend a sentence of 50 years imprisonment with eligibility for parole after 25 years. And I recommend he be allowed to serve as an advisor teaching the next generation what he learned, so they never repeat his mistakes. The vote took longer this time, 5 minutes of discussion in multiple languages. But the result was the same, unanimous. Draven would face justice, but justice tempered with mercy, with recognition that people could change. That redemption was possible. He looked at Alara with something like gratitude. Why? Because Alara said simply, the whole point of this was to prove that there's a better way, that civilization doesn't require cruelty, that even people who've done terrible things can choose differently. You chose differently. That matters. Lyra stepped forward, stood before Draven. For a long moment, the two looked at each other, former master and former slave, former commander and former officer. Thank you, Lyra said quietly, for not making us murder everyone on this planet, for choosing their lives over your pride. Draven's voice was hoarse. I'm sorry for everything, for all of it. I can't undo 300 years, but I can spend whatever time I have left trying to make it mean something. Then do that, Lyra said. She extended her small hand. After a pause, Draven took it with one of his massive ones. Help us build something better. Catheria Prime, Refugee Processing Center Alpha, 2 weeks after surrender. The facility had been an imperial detention center, where families were held hostage to ensure military compliance, where children grew up in cells, their only crime being related to someone the Empire wanted to control. Now it was a reunion center. Alara walked through the main hall, watching Zarn warriors embrace their children for the first time in years. Aquatic Meyer couples reunited with offspring they'd thought dead. Zalani grandparents meeting grandchildren they'd never known existed. The sound of joy was overwhelming. Laughter and tears and languages mixing together into something that transcended words. The sound of families made whole again. A small hand tugged at Alara's uniform. She looked down to see Mira, the 12-year-old Zalani girl from Zerion Prime. The child had refused to leave Alara's side since the liberation, had slept in the Admiral's quarters, had followed her through briefings and battle planning and diplomatic negotiations. Aunt Alara, Mira said she'd started using that title a week ago. Are all these people really free now? Yes, sweetheart, all of them. Free to go wherever they want, to build whatever lives they choose. And I can stay with you on Earth. Alara knelt down, looked into those huge purple eyes that had seen too much suffering for 12 years. If you want to, I'd like that very much. I had a sister once. Her name was Emily. She died when I was young, and I've missed having family ever since. Mira threw her arms around Alara's neck. I don't remember my mother very well, but I think she'd be happy I found you. Commander Cole approached, careful not to intrude on the moment. Admiral, the Council is assembling for the formal declaration. They're ready when you are. Alara stood, taking Mira's hand. Then let's go make history. Neutral Station Aurora, Galactic Council Chamber, Reformed Assembly. The old Council Chamber on Catheria Prime had been too steeped in imperial symbolism, too many memories of slavery and oppression. So they'd chosen neutral ground, Aurora Station, built by the coalitions specifically for this purpose. 43 species sent representatives. Not the old hierarchy of masters and slaves, but equals gathering to build something new. The chamber was circular with seats arranged so no one sat higher than anyone else. Translators worked overtime, rendering speeches into dozens of languages simultaneously. Admiral Alara Voss stood at the center. She'd been nominated for Secretary General of what they were calling the Free Worlds Coalition. The vote had been near unanimous, only the Catherians had abstained, still processing their fall from power. I appreciate the nomination, Alara said, her voice carrying through the chamber's acoustics, and I'm honored by your trust. But I need to tell you something first. She activated a holographic display. It showed the old Galactic Council, the one that had ruled before the Empire's fall, the representatives who'd voted on matters of galactic importance. 10 years ago, Helios Station was attacked by pirates. 40,000 people were trapped, dying. They sent distress calls. They invoked Article 12, the Humanitarian Assistance Clause, that supposedly bound all civilized species to help those in need. The hologram showed voting records, names, numbers. The council voted 5-2 against providing assistance. 5 species decided that helping 40,000 people wasn't worth the political complications, wasn't worth potentially offending the pirates, wasn't worth the risk. Alara's voice remained calm, but everyone in the chamber could hear the steel beneath it. Among those 40,000 dead was my sister, Emily. She was 22 years old. She was going to be a teacher. She wanted to help children learn. She died begging for help that never came because 5 species decided her life didn't matter enough. Silence filled the chamber. Some representatives shifted uncomfortably. They'd been part of that old council. They'd made those votes. I tell you this, Alara continued, because humanity remembers. We remember what it feels like to call for help and hear silence. We remember what it feels like to be abandoned by a galaxy that called itself civilized. She deactivated the hologram. That's why we spent 300 years preparing. Not for conquest, not for revenge, but to make sure that no one ever has to feel that abandonment again. To make sure that when someone cries for help, someone answers. Alara looked around the circle, met the eyes of beings from dozens of worlds. You've asked humanity to lead this coalition, to be Secretary General, and I'm telling you we decline. Shocked murmurs filled the chamber. Not because we don't care, Alara clarified, but because leadership isn't what this galaxy needs. This galaxy has had enough leaders, enough rulers, enough masters telling others what to do and how to live. She pulled up another display. This one showed human ships, thousands of them. Humanity is withdrawing from the Coalition Council. We will not take seats in your government. We will not vote on your laws. We will not tell you how to run your civilizations. Then what will you do? The Zilani representative asked a woman named Sira, who'd been freed from the mines of Kelos 7. We will become the protectorate force, Alara said. Independent, outside government structures. We will respond to distress calls. We will protect those who cannot protect themselves. We will ensure that Article 12 means something, that when someone needs help, help comes. She looked at each representative in turn. We ask nothing in return, no payment, no territory, no political influence. We do this because it's right, because someone should, because we remember what it feels like when no one does. A human voice spoke from the chamber entrance. Fleet Admiral Marcus Thorne walked in, moving with the careful deliberation of his 60 years, but his voice was still strong. If I may, Thorne said, I'd like to add some context for the younger beings here. Alara nodded, stepped aside. Thorne moved to the center of the circle, looked around at faces from dozens of species, young and old, former slaves and former masters, all trying to build something better. 300 years ago, humanity nearly destroyed itself, he said quietly. Wars that killed millions, weapons that could have ended our species. We stood on the edge of extinction and looked into that abyss. He pulled up images from Earth's history, cities destroyed, populations displaced, the horrors humans had inflicted on each other. We learned something in those dark times. We learned that power without restraint is tyranny, that strength without wisdom is cruelty, that the ability to destroy doesn't make you civilized, the wisdom to choose not to, that's what matters. Thorne activated another display, platform Helios rotating slowly in the hologram. We built 7 sun-killer weapons, 7 platforms capable of triggering supernovas, capable of committing genocide on a scale this galaxy has never seen. We built them to prove we could, and then we chose never to use them. He looked at the Catherian representative, a young female named Kessa, who'd been part of the resistance movement. We could have destroyed Catheria Prime. We could have killed 14 billion people in revenge for centuries of slavery. We had the power. We had the justification. And we chose mercy instead. His voice grew softer, more contemplative. That choice, that simple choice between destruction and restraint, that's what separates civilization from barbarism. That's what we learned in 10,000 years of human history. That's what cost us millions of lives to understand. Thorne looked at Alara, at the younger generation who'd fought the war and won it. So when Admiral Voss says we're withdrawing from governance, understand what she's really saying. We're not your rulers. We're not your masters. We're not even your leaders. We're your guardians. We're the ones who remember what wolves look like because we were wolves once. We didn't like what we saw. He turned back to the council. Si vis pacem para bellum. It's an old Earth saying, Latin. If you want peace, prepare for war. For 300 years we prepared. We built weapons. We trained soldiers. We became the most powerful military force this galaxy has ever seen. A pause. Heavy. Significant. And then we chose not to conquer you with it. That's the lesson. That's what we want you to understand. Real strength isn't the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to. He returned to his seat, the weight of earned wisdom visible in every movement. The council sat in silence for a long moment, processing, understanding. Finally, Lyra stood, the former Imperial officer who'd become the first Zilani ambassador to the coalition. The Zilani delegation moves to accept humanity's declaration. Let them be protectorate force. Let them be the guardians who answer when we call. And let us, all of us, learn from their example. Learn that power with restraint is strength. That mercy is not weakness. That civilization is measured not by our ability to destroy, but by our choice not to. The vote was unanimous. Humanity would withdraw from governmental structures, would become an independent protectorate force, would maintain the largest military fleet in the galaxy and use it only for defense, only for rescue, only for protection, would never ever use it for conquest. 10 years later, Helios Station Memorial, year 310. The station had been rebuilt, not as a mining outpost or industrial facility, and as a memorial, a place of remembrance. Crystalline walls curved into a dome. Etched into those walls in letters of light that never dimmed were 40,000 names. Every person who died when the old Galactic Council voted not to help. Every life that had mattered, even when others said it didn't. Alara stood before one section of the wall. Her fingers traced letters that glowed softly from Emily Voss, age 22, beloved sister, teacher, dreamer. She was 48 now. Gray threaded through her red hair. Lines marked her face, the weight of command of war of 10 years spent building peace. But her eyes were still clear, still determined. A presence beside her. Alara didn't need to look to know who it was. Mira, she said softly. The young Zilani woman, 22 years old now, the same age Emily had been, stood beside her adoptive aunt. Mira wore the uniform of the Protectorate Force with pilot's wings on her collar. The first Zilani pilot, the first of her species to fly human warships. I still think about her, Mira said quietly, looking at Emily's name. Even though I never met her, I think about the person who would have been my aunt if she'd lived, the teacher she would have been. She would have loved you, Alara said. She would have been so proud of what you've become. Another presence, Admiral Marcus Thorne, 70 years old now, officially retired, white hair and deep lines and eyes that had seen the birth of a better galaxy. He carried flowers native to Earth grown in the station's memorial gardens. Room for an old soldier, he asked. Always Admiral. Thorne placed the flowers beneath Emily's name. Stepped back, saluted, a gesture of respect, of remembrance, of promise. 40,000 names, he said quietly. 40,000 reasons we did what we did. 40,000 people who dated so the galaxy could learn that evil exists. That tyranny is real. That someone needs to stand against it. And we did, Alara said. We stood, we fought, we won. More than won, Thorne corrected gently. We changed things. 10 years ago, the galaxy was ruled by empires and slavery. Today, he gestured to the viewing window where dozens of ships from dozens of species flew past the station. Today, we have the Free Worlds Coalition, 43 species living in actual freedom. No slaves, no masters, just people trying to build better lives. And the Protectorate, Mira asked, how many calls have we answered in 10 years? 473, Thorne replied. Distress calls from across the galaxy. Pirates, natural disasters, first contact situations that went wrong. We've responded to all of them. 0 have been ignored. 0 have gone unanswered. Alara smiled slightly. Article 12 means something now. It means everything, Thorn said. It means when someone calls for help, help comes. That's what civilization should mean. That's what we're teaching the galaxy. Footsteps behind them. A massive figure approached Supreme Commander Draven, released early from prison after years of advisory service. At 70 in Catherian years, he moved carefully, his forearms showing the stiffness of age and old wounds. He stopped a respectful distance away, uncertain if he was welcome at this sacred place. Alara turned, looked at the alien who'd threatened her 10 years ago. Who'd learned? Who'd spent a decade teaching the next generation about the dangers of unchecked power? Commander Draven, she said, come, stand with us. Draven approached slowly, looked at the 40,000 names glowing on the walls. I never knew their names, he said quietly. When the old council voted not to help Helios Station, I was there. I abstained, told myself it wasn't my concern, told myself the Empire couldn't get involved in every crisis. His voice cracked slightly. I never knew their names, never thought of them as people, just numbers, statistics, acceptable losses. But they were people, like Emily, like all of them. He placed his own flowers native to Catheria Prime blue and delicate beneath the memorial wall. I teach at the Guardian Academy. Now, Draven continued, every class begins the same way. I bring them here. I show them these names. And I tell them these are the people I failed to save. These are the people who died because I chose convenience over conscience. These are the people who haunt me. He looked at Alara. And then I tell them, don't be me. Don't make my mistakes. Don't choose power over people. Don't tell yourself that some lives matter less. Because they don't. They never did. I just needed 40,000 people to die before I learned it. Thorn put a hand on Draven's shoulder. You're here now, teaching them, making sure the next generation does better. That matters, Commander. Redemption is real. Change is possible. You're living proof. More figures approached. The memorial had become a gathering place, former Imperial citizens and former slaves, young and old, dozens of species coming together for the annual remembrance ceremony. Lyra arrived with a delegation of Zilani, representing their homeworld's government, now having been elected by her people. With her came Krell, the Zarn warrior commander, now leading a full battle group of Zarn ships that had joined the Protectorate force. Admiral Voss Krell rumbled his fist over his hearts in salute. The Zarn remember this day, the day we acknowledge the cost of tyranny, the day we remember why we guard. Why we protect, Alara added, why we answer the call. A young Catherian female approached Kessa, who'd been part of the resistance during the war, now serving as a junior officer in the Protectorate force. She carried a data pad. Admiral, there's a transmission. Priority Alpha. Distress, call from Sector 447. Alara took the pad, read the message. Her expression hardened. What is it? Thorn asked. New Empire, the Krell Dominion. They've attacked a peaceful colony, the Andara system. 12 million civilians. They're demanding vassalization. The colony is refusing. They're asking for help. Silence fell over the gathered group, everyone understanding what this meant. The galaxy had been peaceful for 10 years, but tyranny hadn't ended. Evil still existed in the dark between stars. How far? Krell asked. 200 light years, outside coalition space. We have no treaty obligations, no legal authority, no jurisdiction whatsoever. And Mira asked quietly. Alara looked at the 40,000 names glowing on the walls, looked at Emily's name, at all the people who died because someone decided their lives didn't matter enough to help. And we answer anyway, Alara said firmly, because that's what we do. That's what the Protectorate Force exists for. Legal authority doesn't matter. Treaties don't matter. The only thing that matters is that someone needs help and we can provide it. She activated her communicator. All Protectorate ships, this is Admiral Voss. We have a priority Alpha distress call. Andara System Sector 447. Civilian population under threat from hostile Empire. All available vessels report to staging area within 6 hours. We jump in 12 hours. Mira saluted. I'll prep my squadron, ma'am. Good. And Mira, Alara caught her adopted niece's arm. Be careful out there. We don't know anything about this Krell Dominion. Could be they're worse than the Catherian Empire. Could be better. Either way, we go in prepared for anything. We're always prepared, Mira said with a slight smile. You taught me that. The memorial ceremony shifted from remembrance to mobilization. Officers moved to their ships. Communicators lit up with orders. The Protectorate force was responding. Thorn watched with satisfaction. You know, he said to Alara, 10 years ago we ended one Barn Empire, now we're about to face another. Some might say we should let the coalition handle it. Some might say that, Alara agreed, but those people learned nothing from 40,000 deaths, learned nothing from 3 centuries of slavery, learned nothing from everything we fought for. She looked at the memorial wall one last time. We don't fight because we hate what's in front of us, Alara said quietly. We fight because we love what's behind us. We fight because we remember what it feels like to be abandoned. And we swore never again. Not to anyone. Not if we can prevent it. Thorne nodded. The council won't like it. Technically violating sovereign space. Let them complain, Alara said. We're not asking permission. We're not a government bound by treaties. We're guardians. And guardians don't wait for paperwork when people are dying. She turned to address the gathered group, former enemies and former slaves. Young officers and old warriors, dozens of species united by one principle. In 6 hours, Alara announced, the Protectorate Force will answer a distress call. We'll defend people we've never met, people who owe us nothing, people who can offer nothing in return. She paused. We do this because it's right, because someone should, because we remember what happens when no one does, and because we're guardians who remember what wolves look like, because we were wolves once. We learned, we changed, and now we make sure others don't have to learn the hard way. Krell slammed all 4 fists together, a Zarn gesture of commitment. The Zarn fly with you, Admiral, always. Lyra nodded. Zilani support fleet will be ready in 4 hours. Kessa saluted. Catherian volunteers request permission to join. We want to prove we've learned, that we're different now. One by one, representatives from dozens of species pledged support. The Protectorate Force had started as human. Over 10 years, it had become something larger. A coalition of the willing. A gathering of those who remembered tyranny and refused to let it return. Draven watched with wonder. 10 years ago, I commanded fleets that crushed resistance and enslaved populations. Today, I watch those same populations volunteer to save strangers. The galaxy has changed. No, Thorne corrected gently. The galaxy is finally becoming what it should have been. What it could have been if people had chosen differently 300 years ago. He looked at the memorial wall. But we didn't, and 40,000 people died, and billions suffered under slavery. And all we can do now is make sure their deaths meant something. Make sure lessons learned in blood aren't forgotten in peace. Alara's communicator chimed, 800 ships already en route to staging. More would follow. Admiral, Thorne said quietly, you know this could start another war. If this Krell Dominion is as large as the Catherian Empire, then we'll face them, Alara said simply, and we'll win, because we have something they don't. People fighting because they believe in freedom, because they've tasted it and refuse to lose it, because they remember slavery and would rather die than go back. She looked at Mira, at the young pilot who'd been a terrified child in a factory 10 years ago, who'd grown into a warrior, an officer, a symbol of everything they'd achieved. Besides, Alara continued, we're not fighting to conquer, we're fighting to liberate. Tyrants never understand that difference, which is why they always lose. USS Liberation, bridge, 12 hours later, the Protectorate fleet assembled. 800 ships from 43 species, human dreadnoughts alongside Zarn destroyers, Zilani cruisers beside Catherian volunteers, former masters and former slaves flying together, united by one principle that every life matters, that freedom is worth defending, that civilization means standing up when others fall. Admiral Alara Voss stood on her flagship's bridge. The same ship that had been Prometheus had become Liberation and remained the symbol of everything humanity fought for. Commander Cole stood beside her, older but still watchful. Still the warrior who'd proven strength could serve liberation instead of conquest. Fleet reports ready, Cole said. All ships in formation, drives charged, weapons hot. We can jump on your order. Alara looked at the tactical display. 800 ships carrying thousands, willing to risk everything for strangers, willing to fly into unknown danger for people they'd never meet. This was what 300 years of preparation, 60 days of war, and 10 years of peace had built. Not an empire, a coalition of the willing, a gathering of guardians, an answer to the question, what do you do when you hear someone crying for help? You answer, always. Open a channel, Alara ordered, fleet-wide. Her face appeared on screens throughout 800 ships, human and alien, veterans and recruits, former enemies united. 10 years ago, Alara said, we ended an empire built on slavery. We freed 50 billion people. We proved that power with restraint is true strength. We showed the galaxy a better way. She paused. Today, we do it again. The Andara colony needs help. 12 million people facing an empire that wants to enslave them. They called, and we're answering, because that's what we do. That's what guardians do. Her voice grew stronger. We don't fight because we hate what's in front of us. We fight because we love what's behind us. We fight because we remember abandonment. We fight because someone should and we can. She looked at her crew, at Mira visible on another screen in her fighter cockpit, at Krell commanding his battle group, at Lyra coordinating support, at Kessa leading volunteers, at all of them. Every being who'd chosen to stand, to answer the call, to be guardians. Real strength, Alara said, isn't the ability to destroy. It's the wisdom to know when not to. We've proven that. We'll prove it again. And we'll keep proving it as long as tyranny exists and people need help. She took a breath. The choice, that simple choice between destruction and restraint, between conquest and liberation, between tyranny and freedom, that choice echoes through generations. Our children will remember. The galaxy will remember. History will remember. Alara touched the control. We are guardians. We are protectors. We are the answer when someone cries for help. And as long as we exist, no one will be abandoned. No one will call into darkness and hear silence. She pressed the button. All ships, jump. 800 ships vanished into hyperspace, racing toward Andara, racing toward 12 million people who needed help, racing toward another empire that would learn the lesson, that humanity and their allies did not forget, did not forgive tyranny, and would answer every call no matter the cost, the distance, the danger. Because that's what guardians do. Helios Station Memorial, 1 hour after fleet departure. Admiral Marcus Thorne stood alone before the memorial wall, 70 years old, retired, watching the next generation take up the burden. 40,000 names glowed, Emily Voss among them. People who died because someone decided their lives didn't matter. We answered, Thorne said quietly. We built something better. We became the people who answer when others call. You didn't die for nothing. I promise you that. He placed his hand on the wall, felt the warmth of glowing letters. The age of empires has ended. The age of guardians has begun. And it began here, with you, with 40,000 people who mattered even when others said they didn't. Behind him, footsteps. Draven approached respectfully. Admiral Thorne, Draven said quietly, do you think we've done enough? Learned enough, changed enough? Thorne turned, looked at the alien who'd been enemy prisoner, ally friend. Living proof that people could change. That redemption was real. I think, Thorne said slowly, that we've learned the most important lesson. That power without wisdom is tyranny. That strength without restraint is cruelty. That civilization isn't measured by what we can destroy, but by what we choose to protect. He looked at the memorial. 40,000 people died to teach us that. Billions suffered under slavery, and all we can do is make sure their suffering meant something. Make sure lessons learned in blood aren't forgotten in peace. And if we face another empire, Draven asked, another tyrant, another war, then we fight, Thorne said simply, and we win. Not because we're stronger, though we are, not because we're smarter, though we might be, but because we're fighting for something that matters, for freedom, for dignity, for the simple truth that every life has value. He turned to face Draven. That's what you teach at the academy. That's what you tell every recruit. Yes, Draven confirmed. I tell them about my mistakes, about 3 centuries serving tyranny, about the moment I chose differently. And I tell them, don't be me. Don't wait 300 years to choose right. Choose now. Choose freedom. Choose mercy. Choose the hard right over the easy wrong. Then you're doing exactly what you should, Thorne said. And maybe the next generation won't need to learn in blood. Maybe they'll learn in classrooms and memorials. Maybe they'll be better than we were. Draven looked at the 40,000 names. I hope so, he said quietly. I hope they never have to stand here like we do, carrying the weight of everyone we failed, everyone we abandoned, everyone who died because we chose wrong. But if they do, Thorne said, they'll know what to do, because we're teaching them, because we built something that will outlast us, a principle stronger than government, a commitment deeper than treaties. He gestured to the stars. Out there right now, Alara and Mira and Krell and Lyra and 800 ships are flying into danger for strangers, answering a call they didn't have to answer, choosing the hard right. Thorne smiled. That's our legacy, not ships or wars, but the principle we established, that when someone cries for help, help comes, that no one is abandoned, that guardians answer. He saluted the memorial, the 40,000 names. The people who died so others could learn. We answered, he said again. We built something better, and we'll make sure it lasts. That's what we owe you. That's what we owe everyone who suffered so we could learn. The two old warriors, human and Catherian, former enemies united by wisdom, earned through suffering, stood together as stars turned above, and 800 ships raced through hyperspace. The age of empires had ended. The age of guardians had begun. And the choice, that simple choice, between destruction and protection, between tyranny and freedom, between abandonment and answer, that choice would echo through generations, forever. Andara system, 6 hours after fleet departure. The Liberation dropped out of hyperspace precisely on target. 799 more ships appeared in perfect formation. The Protectorate fleet had arrived. On the planet below, 12 million civilians looked up and saw hope. On the Krell Dominion, warships commanders looked at sensors and saw impossibility. Hundreds of ships from dozens of species. Technology they couldn't identify. Formation that spoke of absolute confidence. Admiral Ilara Voss opened communication to both colony and attackers. This is Admiral Ilara Voss of the Protectorate Force. Andara Colony, you called for help. Help has arrived. You will not be enslaved. You will not be conquered. You will not be abandoned. She switched focus to the Krell ships. Krell Dominion, you have attacked a peaceful colony. You have threatened civilians. You have given them a choice between slavery and death. Let me give you a different choice. Withdraw now, leave the system. Never return or learn what happens when empires meet guardians. Silence filled the void, then a response. Arrogant, dismissive. You have no authority here, human. This sector is outside your coalition, outside your jurisdiction. This is none of your concern. Ilara smiled, the same smile she'd given Draven 10 years ago. You're right, she said quietly. This is none of our concern. These people owe us nothing. This colony has no treaty with us, no contract, no obligation. We're here purely because someone asked for help and we choose to answer. Her voice hardened. That's what makes us different from you. We don't need treaties or jurisdiction or legal authority to do the right thing. We just do it because someone should, because we can, because we remember what it feels like to be abandoned and we swore never again. She leaned forward. Now withdraw, or we'll teach you the same lesson we taught the Catherian Empire. And trust me, you won't enjoy the education. The Krell commander laughed. You defeated one primitive empire. We are not 800 ships worth of targeting lasers painted his fleet. 800 ships worth of weapons came online. 800 ships demonstrating exactly why empires learn to fear guardians. Last warning, Ilara said. Choose wisely, choose quickly, because in 60 seconds we stop asking. 59, 58, 57. At 32 seconds, the Krell fleet jumped to hyperspace, fled without firing, ran from guardians who'd proven they meant what they said. The Andara colony was safe. 12 million people were free. The Protectorate force had answered another call. Mira's voice came over calm from her fighter. Ma'am, should we pursue? No, Ilara replied. Let them run. Let them tell others what they saw. Let the galaxy know when you threaten the weak guardians, answer. When you enslave the innocent, guardians come. When you choose tyranny, guardians teach you the cost. She looked at the planet below. 12 million people who would never know slavery, who would live free because someone answered. Mira, Ilara said quietly, your Aunt Emily would have loved this. Watching you fly, watching you save millions, watching you become exactly the person she wanted to be. I know, Mira replied softly. I feel her with me every time we answer a call, every time we save someone, like we're keeping a promise to her, to all 40,000. We are, Ilara confirmed, and we always will. As long as guardians exist, no one will be abandoned. As long as we remember, no call goes unanswered. As long as we choose courage, freedom will have defenders. The Protectorate fleet remained in orbit 3 days, long enough to ensure the Krell didn't return, long enough to help strengthen defenses, long enough to teach them they weren't alone, that guardians watched, that freedom had defenders, that tyranny would face consequences. Then the fleet jumped back to patrols and training and waiting for the next call, back to being the answer when someone cried for help. 3 days later, as the Liberation prepared to depart, Ilara stood alone on the observation deck. She looked at Andara below 12 million free people going about their lives. She thought of Emily, of the promise she'd made 10 years ago. We kept it, she whispered to the stars. Every single call, we answered them all. Mira's reflection appeared in the window behind her. Aunt Elara, are you ready? Elara turned, smiled. Yes, let's go home. But even as she said it, she knew the truth. Home wasn't Earth anymore. Home was wherever the next call came from. Home was being a guardian, and she wouldn't have it any other way. The age of guardians continued. The choice endured. Somewhere in deep space on a memorial station where 40,000 names glowed, new names were being added. Not names of the dead, names of the saved. 12 million people from Endara Colony. 12 million who would never be slaves. 12 million who existed as free beings because someone answered their call. Because guardians don't forget. Because guardians don't abandon. Because guardians answer. Always.